Hey guys, peace and blessings. This is Walil Archer from the Real Rap Radio Show on Downtown Hot Radio. I have my special guest, Tracy Emerick. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm super excited to have you today to talk about Christianity.
Well, one of my favorite topics.
Yes. So you had done some research and you realized Christianity may not be working the way they're teaching it now.
Well, I think the idea of having a building and hope that people are going to show up doesn't work, or it's not working. It worked for a long time, but it just doesn't seem to be working today. So I thought maybe we'll try a different angle and try to involve people with different storylines to see that God is connected to them, whether they want to be connected to God or not. And I did that by tying in the deity with known individuals.
And let's talk about your book,
Okay.
your most
Uh,
recent book.
the most recent book is called Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ. And what I did is I looked at Jesus as an entrepreneur, developing and putting forth the idea of love over fear. And then I looked at Steve Jobs as an individual who put interface over geek. I mean, he basically turned all of us into fluid geeks by putting a usable front end on computers. I mean, and that was entrepreneurial because nobody else had done it. He didn't invent anything. He took something that already existed, repackaged it, and put it in our hands. So now they were all computer users. So they both did similar things. They didn't invent anything new. They took what already existed, repackaged it in a way we could understand it. And I think that's the message I'm trying to get through in the Extreme Entrepreneurs book.
Would you like to share a page or two from the book?
Oh boy, you got me on that one.
Or maybe highlight something that's off the top of your head about the book that you want the listeners to know.
Well, I think the essence of what I want listeners to know is that God is with us whether we want him to be or not, but he's always there for us. And I mean, Steve Jobs was pretty much of an agnostic, but he did have the spark of caring for people. He didn't like dealing with people, but he liked the result of his inventions for people. Jesus, on the other hand, dealt with people one-on-one and in groups. So there's different personalities, but both of them had the end result of wanting to help other people.
Now, how long did it take you to write that book?
Well, the first one was the toughest. That one took a couple of years. I actually worked with my pastor because I had this big idea and I had to refine it, but I need somebody to bounce the ideas off of. And she gave me some very good feedback and really refined the book to where it is now.
And what's the name of that? The title of the book for the first one?
The first one is Extreme Entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs and Jesus Christ.
Okay. And then your second book was?
The second book is once you have a big idea, then you got to move it forward. And for that one, I chose Martin Luther King. And the name of that book is Constant Courage, Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesus Christ. And in that case, both of them had similar courage to move forward their ideas, even though it was contra to popular interest or popular beliefs. But the courage prevailed, peaceful courage prevailed. And so I use Dr. King as my example of somebody who had the courage of convictions to stay with it and keep it going, which is a lot of us can have an idea, but moving it forward requires courage because oftentimes ideas buck the system. And whenever you buck the system, you're going to get pushback. And when you get pushback, you get discouraged. But you got to have courage if you have a big idea.
And what inspired you to use Martin Luther King in this book?
Well, he exemplified for me true courage in the same way Jesus did. He had his beliefs, He stuck to his guns, no pun intended. He stuck to his beliefs, and he persevered. Unfortunately, both of them had tragic endings, but they both persevered to the day they died. They never wavered, never changed their story, never backpedaled, always moved forward. And I thought, that Dr. King was a good example for us to model. If you have the courage of your convictions, again, the courage of your idea in your organization, in your church, in your business, in your life, you have to have courage to stick with it.
And the third book?
The third book is, once you have your idea and your convictions, now you're going to have to deal with some other people. And I used that book. The name of that book is Nifty Neighbors, Mr. Rogers and Jesus Christ. And I use Mr. Rogers. It's kind of a dated individual, but my target for this book is really people in their 40s and 50s who grew up with Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers was a perfect example of love thy neighbor. I mean, he was the paradigm of how to get along with other people, with controversy, with difficult times. He was always there, always calm, and it was interesting because my son at the time, when he was little, used to watch Sesame Street, which was kind of frenetic. And then here comes Mr. Rogers with his cardigan sweater and his sneakers and being calm and his little stories and his little puppets and stuff. But he represented how to accumulate friendships, how to accumulate relationships, and how to maintain relationships, which, if you're going to move your idea forward, you got to have relationships. You can't do it all by yourself.
So true. And then the fourth book?
The fourth book was, once you've got your idea, you've got your courage, you've got your group working with you, you've got to manage the process. And so I decided to use Bill Belichick. I called it Consummate Coaches, Bill Belichick and Jesus Christ. And in that case, the parallels between Bill Belichick and Jesus are striking, in that neither one of them wavered from their direction. They managed their flock, they managed their team. They always had an idea and a vision for the individual as well as for the population, for the society, or for the whole team. And he never changed. He was always the same person. He would never blame anybody for anything. If a player didn't have a good day, he said, I didn't coach him properly. So he was my idea of the consummate coach, to get the best out of people and actually encourage them to go beyond what they thought they could, much like Jesus did with his 12 disciples. I mean, he didn't get Pharisees and all the big names. He got a fisherman and he got a tax collector, and he said, okay, guys, I want you to carry my word forward. And he coached and counseled them, and now we've got 1.2 billion followers. So I think he did a pretty good job of coaching and counseling to get his word out.
Yeah, all four of those are great titles. How did you come up with your titles?
Well, I wanted something that was attention getting. And so I went through a lot of iterations, but when I decided on, like, for example, extreme entrepreneurs, a lot of the feedback I've gotten is people were kind of shocked by the title. They never really thought of Jesus as an entrepreneur, and am I downgrading him, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I want you to read the book. And so I clearly the foundation for the books are Jesus Christ. And what I try to do is, again, pull the human and the deity together and challenge people, maybe upset them a little bit, because I've had a couple of reviews that said, boy, I don't know about this calling Jesus an entrepreneur. And I said, well, you read the book. So it accomplished its mission.
I would love to hear more about that book, because the funny thing is, ever since, I want to say, coronavirus, everyone jumped out, or a lot more people jumped out and became entrepreneurs. So when I heard that title, I said, hey, he's on to something.
Right. Well, and I think Steve Jobs is a good example entrepreneurism, because one of the things he used to do to hire people, early on, he did the normal thing and looked at resumes and hired people for the jobs. He bagged that. He said, that ain't going to work. I just need ordinary people that are enthusiastic. And so what he used to do to hire people is he'd put them in front of one of his latest concoctions of the Mac, before it was the Mac, when it was the Lisa. But he set it down in front of it and say, what do you think? And if they got excited about the product, he hired them. I mean, he had people doing jobs that they never thought they were going to do, but they were enthusiastic. And I think that was the same hiring profile that Jesus used. He found 12 men who were enthusiastic about following him. And he said, okay, guys, let's go do it. And he gave them the message and he gave them the means. So Steve Jobs did the same thing. And look, he's changed the world.
Now, one thing you mentioned in the beginning of the interview is having a location, think of people going to show up, just isn't working as much as it used to. What do you think they should do differently these days?
Well, I know in my church, I'm investing in a lot of technology, helping the church expand technology. We have streaming services now. I want to have more video in the church, and try to get pastors to integrate more videos and things into their sermons, because they're kind of stuck in a rut too. So I'm from a very conservative church in New England, a congregational church, old traditions, and I'm getting some pushback on electronics. But I think that the world that's evolving is a world of tablets. And so what we've got to do is figure out how to get the message engaging on a tablet or on a phone. I don't think having just the Sunday morning come, let's have a service, that's not going to cut it anymore. People are more used today to on demand. When I'm ready for it, I'll look at it. But I don't think I'm going to get dressed up at 10 o'clock Sunday morning and show up. So and I don't know if I'm right. I could be 180 degrees wrong, but I just know that the attendance is down, so we've got to do something to reach out and get people's attention. But I think we have to do it not in a preachy way, not in a telling way or a directive way, but in an inviting way, much like Jesus did. The only people who really told stuff to were the disciples. Everybody else he challenged to think and use their, get confused and find their way. And I think maybe that's a better methodology if we can figure out how to make that electronic. And I don't have the answer. All I know is right now I'm kind of crashing around for some clues that seem to work and move forward with that. Like I said, I don't have the answer. There's probably a bunch of answers that we need to incorporate.
Now, what do you think is the reason to drop of attendance?
I'm sorry?
What do you think is the reason why attendance is dropping?
Well, I think part of that was parental guidance, because there's a large gap in our congregation, as in others, in the 40 to 50-year-olds or the 40 to 60-year-olds. There's a huge gap. So what that meant is the baby boomers didn't necessarily do a great job as our parents did. I'm a boomer, and I thought I was doing a good job, but my children, neither one of them find that God needs to be part of their life. So I don't know if I relied too much on the church and I didn't bring it home enough. I don't know. I'm questioning myself, but there's a void in that age group. And I think part of it was us assuming they were going to get it and not having it at home like my parents did, or I dropped the ball. I'm not sure, but that age group, we're starting to see in my church younger parents, in their 20s and 30s with small children. So the good news is they're seeking something. So we're seeing a little bit of, maybe there's a little bit of hope here. But I truly believe God's going to make it work or not work. All we can do is try to figure the handles and bars to make things happen. By the best we can. I don't, like I said, I don't have the answer, but I think there was a void in our leadership.
Yeah, because sometimes I wonder. I don't think you actually dropped the ball. I think it's when they started taking religion out of school. Because when I came up, religion was in school. But as I got older, they started removing religion from schools. So I think that had an impact on people really following the religion.
Well, that, and I've been a state legislator for 10 years. And one of the things I noticed is they work against religion. I mean, it's one thing to be neutral and say, okay, you can pray if you want to, or okay, you can have a club, a Christian club, if you want to. But now they work against that. So you're right. It was once they took it out of school, but then once they made it a problem, we don't even study Christianity as a history anymore, as part of history. It's kind of what we'll study Islam, but we won't study Christendom. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the school is working contra Jesus.
Now, what would you say your experience been from writing the 4 different books? So was it anything that you actually learned during the process?
Well, I learned that I needed inspiration, and I learned to listen when I prayed and said, "Boy, you got to get me out of this hole. I don't know where this book's going." I always got inspiration, and I learned to listen to editors, because sometimes the editor can turn you around a little bit, and when you get in a rough spot. So part of that was my learning about my nifty neighbors and working with the crew that was assembled on my behalf, and not trying to do it all myself. I mean, I would put things together and they would say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Early on, I would have fought them a little bit because, oh, you're challenging my ideas. Well, no, they weren't. They were actually refining my ideas. And once I learned that, the books came easier, because there was a lot of people helping. I mean, they truly were helping. Which was a nice feeling. The first book I kind of did on my own with my pastor, but then the other books I had professional help in the editorial world.
Did you use the same editor for the second and third and fourth book?
Uh, yeah, we actually had a couple of editors involved. Yes,
Okay.
and that helps streamline things, because once you have a rhythm
Mm-hmm.
with an advisor, you kind of get in a groove and understand each other, and you start talking shorthand to each other. And the emails that early on in my career would have been insulting are now supportive. So part of it is my attitude and getting my mind right, to receive help, and I do appreciate it from the divine and from my team.
And you're self-published?
Yes, right now I'm looking for a publisher, to pick up the books or book. I mean, one or all. I've done translations. I've got all the books in audio form. I've got them in Spanish and Chinese. So I'm being as broad as I can to entice somebody to say, "Hey, we can pick this up." And right now, I'm working on. They don't call them storyboards. I'm working on video scripting. I'm not going to produce video. God knows I haven't got skills for that one. But I am trying to have a broad offering, so that if a publisher comes along, at least they can see I've been working at it.
And as far as your book covers, who designed your book covers?
That was done by my current self-publishing publisher,
Okay.
Book Press. Yeah, their designers designed the covers, and I think they did an excellent job.
Okay. Any thoughts on the fifth book?
Well, the fifth book I'm working on now is kind of a wraparound of the first four,
Mm-hmm.
to tie them together in one place. Because if I didn't give you the storyline of these four books, they wouldn't hang together. And so the fifth book is really like a précis of the first four and how they tie together, using the model of an individual going through these 4 steps. And I got to say, I'm kind of lukewarm on it, because if you have to tell everybody everything, then you didn't do a good job when you started out. So, but that's the 5th book. I don't have any more of the Jesus Christ tie-in books. The 5th book was just a kind of a wraparound.
Now, what would you say has been some of your challenges? Because it's not easy to write 4 books. So what were some of the challenges you faced writing the 4 different books?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenge is devoting the time. Everybody thinks you sit down and write. That's not the case. You sit down and think, and then you write, and then you throw it away. So I think just finding the time to do it, and you have to dedicate yourself to so much a day. You can't. I'll work Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 1 to 2. It doesn't work that way. Even if you sit at the computer and stare at a blank screen for 2 hours, it's helpful. So really changing your lifestyle was the toughest part.
Now, where can they find your book at on social media? Where can they purchase your book?
You can find it on Amazon. You can find all the online retailers have the book. I've got some placements in bookstores, but with like 30,000 books floating around, I understand they only have so many shelves. But they're all online, particularly Amazon is where we get the most action. And
that's pretty cool.
The fastest way to find them is just look up my name, Tracy Emerick, and it'll take you to the books.
And that was cool that you put them on Audible, so
Yep.
people could, yeah. Now, how did you come up with the book first, and then you did it, or you did them both simultaneously?
No, I did the book. Actually did all 4 books first, and then used the same voice, the same audio talent to record all 4 books. Because I was advised that's the way to do it, is to have the same audio performer, so that when somebody goes from one book to the next, it doesn't jolt them, so that they have the same comfort level with the same performer. So no, I wrote the 4 books first, and then the publisher said, well, now let's go to audio. Okay. That was out of my hands. They hired the talent. They sent me some, clips of different talent, and I picked one. And so we ended up with a male voice. But that's the publisher helping me.
Nice. So as we begin to close out, any final thoughts or closing remarks that you want to share?
Well, I said to my publisher, I'm 77. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to be around if this thing ever really going to work. And his answer was, well, your heirs will benefit. He kind of missed the point. I'd kind of like to see that I had an effect somewhere, or is it just a drop of water in the ocean? I don't know. There's a little bit of ego saying I'd like some feedback, and right now we're in the building stage, so I guess that's my issue, but I'll have to deal with that.
All right, and as we close out, where can they find you at on social media?
Well, I do email.
Okay.
I'm not real good with Facebook. A little too much technology for me. So Tracy Emerick at Gmail is the easiest way to find me. Yeah, I'm not big on social media. It's a little.
Understood.
Right.
Understood.
When you're in the 7 decades, that social media stuff doesn't catch on.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. Yes. Well, I'd like to thank you for doing the interview today.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So that's my time today on the Real Rap Radio Show. And I'll see you guys next time on the Real Rap Radio Show with Walil Archer on Downtown Hott Radio.